Welcome back to Heritage of Our Fathers. Today we will be talking about the fall of the Great Benin Empire by the British invasion of 1897. The air over Benin in the late 19th century was heavy with tension. Though the people of the ancient kingdom continued their daily lives with dignity and tradition, the royal city, surrounded by massive earthen walls and moats, was a marvel. Its bronze heads and ivory carvings told the stories of centuries past. At its heart stood Oba over Nogbaisi, a monarch proud, resilient, and deeply tied to the gods of his ancestors. But beyond Benin's forest borders, the British, hungry for control of trade routes and resources, saw Benin not as a sovereign kingdom, but as an obstacle to their growing colonial ambitions. In the early 1890s, Britain sought to bend Benin into its will. The kingdom was wealthy in palm oil, ivory, pepper, and other trade goods, but Benin insisted on managing its commerce in its own way, through controlled markets and rituals, overseen by the Oba for the British. This independence was unacceptable. They demanded free trade. Benin resisted. At the center of this clash stood two worlds, one ancient, spiritual and sovereign, the other industrial, expansionist, and driven by profit. In 1897, tension boiled over. A British delegation, led by acting Consul General James Phillips, prepared to march into Benin demanding concessions. Though it was supposed to be a peace mission, it carried hidden motives to depose the Oba and bring Benin fully under British control. Warnings were given. Benin was in the midst of sacred rituals at the time, and the Oba could not receive visitors. But Philip pressed forward, sending letters to London that revealed his true intent to overthrow the king and plunder his treasures. When the British mission entered Benin's territory, they were met not with open arms but with the might of Benin's warriors. In January 1897, at Ugbain village, Benin soldiers ambushed the British column. Spears, arrows, and Dane guns rained upon the intruders. Most of Philip's party was killed. Only a few survivors staggered back to tell the tale. For the British Empire, this was not a defeat to be forgotten, it was a call to vengeance. Within weeks, the British prepared what would become known as the Punitive Expedition. More than 1,200 soldiers and marines, equipped with Maxim guns, rifles, and artillery, set sail for Benin. In February 1897, they landed on the coast and began their march inland. Villages were burned, resistance crushed, and the path to the royal city was carved with blood and fire. The Benin warriors fought bravely, clad in traditional wrappers, coral beads shining upon their necks, and armed with muskets, cutlasses, and bows. They fought not only for their king but for their gods and ancestors. Women joined in rituals of protection. Priests called upon the spirits, and the great moats and walls of Benin stood as the last guardians of independence. But the strength of the British forces was overwhelming. Their weapons broke through ranks of warriors who had never faced such power before. Step by step, the defenses of Benin fell. By February 18, 1897, British forces entered the capital. What they found was not only a city, but also a great civilization, a network of palaces, shrines, and courtyards filled with centuries of art. The famous Benin bronzes, cast in brass and bronze, lined the palace walls, telling the story of dynasties, traditions, and sacred rituals. Ivory tusks carved with fine designs stood like guardians in the courtyards. To the British, these were not sacred relics but trophies. The taking of treasures began almost immediately. Thousands of bronzes, ivory carvings, coral regalia, and royal items were carried away. Flames spread across the city, and the once proud kingdom was left in ruins. Oba Oven Ramwen Nogbaisi left the palace as the city fell. With a few loyal chiefs, he went deep into the forest, carrying the weight of his ancestors on his shoulders. For months he remained hidden, while the British declared victory and set their rule. At last, betrayed by allies who could no longer resist the empire's power, Oven Ramwen surrendered. Yet even in surrender, he carried himself as a king. When brought before the British officers, he wore his coral regalia, stood tall and refused to bow. To his people, he remained their Oba, even in defeat. In September 1897, Oba Oven Ramwen was sent into exile in Calabar in present-day Nigeria. There, without his kingdom but not without his dignity, its monarchy weakened but not erased. The bronzes and treasures taken from Benin traveled across the world to museums in London, Berlin, Paris, and beyond. What had once been sacred objects became displays behind glass, admired but far from their true home. The fall of Benin in 1897 was not just the loss of a city, it was the interruption of a living civilization. The British called it punishment, but for the Edo people, it was sorrow, exile, and survival. Yet Benin did not vanish. Its culture lived on in the songs, rituals, and stories of its people, in the strength of its monarchy, and in the enduring spirit of the Edo nation. Today, the descendants of those who resisted still chant the sacred words, Obe Ghator Kpee eyes. May the Obe live long, and though the bronzes remain scattered across foreign lands, they still whisper of their true origins, reminding the world that Benin was not overcome by weakness, but by overwhelming force, and that its legacy will never die. With this, we have come to the end of today's story. Thank you for watching. God bless. These are some images of the actual event that occurred in 1897. Thank you for watching. God bless. God bless the Edo Benin Kingdom. Peace.